Okay, we continue with methodology, with the behavioral classes that you see. And in principle, this is really one of, say, the oldest sciences in biology. And it's also not have done a lot in describing actually what's going on, but it also have done a lot with system theory and also mathematics, because what's done in ethology is that the observer went to, for instance, an island to look at a certain bird, and first he had to describe what the system was, so what the bird was, and what other animals he had contact with, so describe what the boundaries of the systems are, but also from those species starting to collect certain key attributes. And all the other attributes were not important and were not registered, because as biolog you cannot see everything, but they started to look what certain behaviors, what were the triggers to have that. And some of them are what it classified as reflexes, so that is a response that is automatically triggered and only with it by force can be subsumed. Other one is taxes, and that are sort of attractors where the animals, the species, are interested in, and where they should react on, should be attracted to, or with it be with it afraid of. And you also see that there are some patterns that have a stimulus, but can continue for quite a long time, even if the stimulus is gone. And I worked for a long time with it with horses, and because they were sitting half of the day sitting still in their stables, some of them started to stimulate themselves by having a repetitive behavior, but it was quite difficult for them to get out of. But it gave them, once started, it was difficult to stop it. Okay, we will see examples of all three of those behavioral classes. One of the most studied examples, and one of that also is the highest inspiration for robotics, is the cockroach. The cockroach is one of the most successful species of Earth, and if we will have a third world war, it's probably also the only species that will survive. But in principle, it has a very simple behavior. It's afraid of light. So if you put with a pen light, you shine on the cockroach, it turns with its head and it goes away. Actually, it runs till with its whispers, it feels a wall, and if it feels a wall, then it just follows it. Now, that's precisely a behavior you also want in your robot. And when it finds a hiding place, something where it fits in, then it goes in and makes sure that its head is facing out. And then there is some timer that starts, because if it settles down, the hormones would go down, then it's not longer scared. It comes out again, and until somebody shines on it again with the lights, and then with it starts to look for a hiding place again. Another well-studied species is the stickleback, the stekelbaarsje. Actually, that was a Dutch study, Tinbergen, so he got the Nobel Prize for that. And there you see a lot about more gestalt behavior, where hierarchically the different behaviors are split up in sub-disciplines. And what you have is you have the stickleback that has to live, and to live it has to eat, it has to pair, and it has to fight. That is all, say, with it on the highest level of the hierarchy. But also in fighting, you see with it a certain behavior as with it starting to look bigger, with it moving the fins, etc., till you go to the level from how precisely those fins are actuated. And what you see to show such a certain behavior, you have a lot of stimuli that has to be with it activated, and all those conditions are fulfilled, then it starts to show that behavior. And some of them have a positive effect, but other ones just inhabit that sort of behavior. And based on what such networks, a certain dominant behavior with it comes up. And that was, say, the work of Tinbergen in 1981. Another with it nice example of such a behavior is one of the moths, and he with it can with it fly with it quite with it actively. And they studied what, how it precisely with it behaves. And where the moth is really sensitive for is the sounds that bats make, because the bats love moths and are hunting for it. And the moth can not fly faster than a bat, so it never can with it outrun it. But in principle, when it hears the sound of a bat coming towards it, it's starting to evade, and each of them takes a slightly different angle. So that means that you have a whole cloud of moths, and they spread out. And in that sense, the moth can only catch one or two, but most of them get away. But that's survival of only the whole set of moths. But the moth itself also want to survive. So what happens if the sounds get too strong? Then the bat is really close by. And then the behavior completely with it is changed. It's not longer heading in another with it, direction, but the behavior gets statistic. That means that it cannot longer fly. It starts to drop with it down in a very irregular with it pattern. And because it's such irregular, it doesn't know for itself what it does. It's also very difficult for the bat to catch that moth. And once it dropped to the floor, the sound of the bat is gone, and it can fly again, and it can search again for its other moths. Okay, what you see. And that's really what it really important. That it's not only the behavior of the animal, but inside its community in relationship with its food and its enemies. So in that sense, evolution is a molding force, and only it learns to survive in the circumstances it encounters. And that's also what's seen in evolution. At the moment that you put a species on a different island where the circumstances are different, at that moment you see that a lot of changes occur. But if the environmental pressures stay the same, then the species show the same sort of behavior. So it's more than pure what they sense and what they see, but also how the environment stimulates them. Okay, that's what I wanted to tell about the background of neuroscience, psychology, and ethology. The only thing that I want to show for the last is something that I want to show some examples of bio-inspired robots. So, what you see in robots, that there is a lot of they're really good in surviving in different circumstances, and they're really good in navigation. You have some really great examples from animals that can travel over the whole globe, and they do that by very different sort of sensors. Some work with the pressure of the air, other on infrasound, some on smell, other on magnetic compass, other on the place of the sun in the sky or the star, or the polarization of the sky, or recognizing landmarks on the ground. And in some senses, some species, say biology, still doesn't know how they're able to navigate, and they can continue to look for a certain hidden sensor that should be inside this animal. So one of the species that is well studies is the ant. In this research is the desert ant, and what you can see is you can track his path through the desert. And in the beginning, you see it's really very wiggly in search of food, and then on the top it has found some food, and then in a straight line it can go directly back to where it came from. And what I found out is that those ants really sort of count their steps, because if you make the legs shorter, they would walk back to their nest, but they stop, say, on 2/3 if you make the legs 2/3 shorter. So another thing that is really known from ants, that they really work in groups, and that each of them puts a little bit of order on the path, and if more and more ants use that same path, then you get more and more an GAMO track. And that's actually something that you can easily also do with a robot. You have a sort of deodorant roller where you have a plastic ball that puts a little bit of a certain liquid on the ground, and with a sensor you can easily pick up specifically that chemical or that substance, and in that way make a chemical trail. That also works really fine for robots. Another thing that really inspired the robots is how the animal kingdom works with vision. In the beginning, we really had difficulty to get high-resolution cameras. So what was really nice to have a lot of small cameras and put them in a circle and get the same of sort of vision that you can find in insects. And what's nice is that you can easily with it also couple that to behaviors. So each of the sensors directly coupled with where you are afraid of or not. The cockroach is also very well used as model for the robots, where the behavior of hiding from the light is reinvented for robots. So they made cockroach robot like did with the patterns how they walk, and they learn them to hide away from the light. The question is, do we also make robots equal to our humans? Now, one of the first examples was that they tried to get a robot that was able to swing through the trees. So then you have the first model of a robot that has got the primate. But we, as humans, get out of the trees and start walking. So there's a lot of experiments going on with walking with the robots. On four legs, it's quite easy. In America, they started with a nice small robot that was called Little Dog. They built it for the military, so they made a sort of mule for it that could carry the backpack of 4 soldiers. The soldiers didn't like it because while carrying this with 4 backpacks, it made the same amount of noise as a full helicopter. So walking quietly through the woods was not possible with this big dog. But as you can see in the videos, it really has great walking skills. And actually, they continued this sort of research, and they built the cheetah, and that cheetah was able to run really fast with 16 meters per second. And the video that you can see, you see it full speed, and actually the video stops just before it trips over its own legs, because it's really difficult to get these things working. Okay, last thing is if you move, that's not only to go somewhere, but also to communicate. A lot of our communication is via body language, or sign language. That's not only for us, but also for other animals. One nice experiment that's done in a group of Arkin is the robot honeybee. And what they did is that they put a full a honeybee with a group, and each of the honeybees tells where food can be found by showing a certain dance, and you can see by what orientation where they should go, and how fierce that communication is, how it did. And they did the same dance with a robot bee, and actually the bees precisely went where the robot bee said that his mate should go. And they could measure that the distance by having changed the distance by having a moving environment, and you can see how far they should go to find the food. Okay, that's what I wanted to tell today about animal behavior and how that inspired robotics behavior. We have looked in how our neural system looks like and how we can learn from that. We also showed that behavior is never done alone, but always in an environment, and that by learning how to accomplish your task inside such an environment can be learned from the examples from the animal kingdom. We also see that in nature you have really large sets of sensors, and that each of them can be used for navigation. And if you do that, then you could show different behaviors by combining different simple behaviors to more complex behaviors. But we will work that out later in the next classes.